This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Marshall High School head coach Jake Griedl. Coach Griedl discusses the importance of investing time in your athletes, speaks on the challenges of coaching at historically good programs, and gives advice to young coaches who aspire to advance in the coaching ranks. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Griedl.
Coach, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you having me on. I listen to this stuff every week. This is a great podcast, and just happy to be on it. It's good stuff.
No doubt, man. Well, obviously the guests make it special, and this sport is so awesome because you can just get literally anybody on the podcast, and then we all just have these very unique stories that always come together on how we got to places, got to where we are, and I appreciate you sharing yours, man. And before we kind of get into maybe some of your more personal stuff, I do want to talk about your coaching style, okay? If anybody keeps up with you on social media or ever seen you interact with your staff or players, it's very easy to see that you have a style of humility and service to others, and specifically your staff and players. What do you attribute that style to? You've had quite a few stops along the way, played for some, coached for some very, very good coaches, had a good playing career up in Nebraska. Where did you pick this style up, and how have you seen it impact your program?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been very, very, very fortunate at this age to have some great mentor coaches that kind of took me under their wing and allowed me to not maybe make some of the egotistical mistakes that some young coaches can fall into the trap of. And so being under Hank Carter's coaching ability and his talent at Lake Travis, he kind of instilled a lot of that into me. Playing in programs that were good programs and bad programs, you kind of learn the do's and don'ts and to find the value in the what not to do's as well. But ultimately, I think through the 10, 11 years of coaching, it comes down to service. It comes down to finding those coaches, that take care of their staff, that take care of their players, and just seeing how much more attractive those jobs then become. And so wanted to kind of emulate that. Wanted to kind of be that guy that can have his feet where they are, not necessarily looking for the next job or the next best coach, but taking the coaches that we have and doing my best to instill in them some of the things that I've been taught, but also trying to learn from them things that they know that they've been taught that can help me become a better head coach, a better athletic director, because I think that's extremely valuable. And so ultimately, I think just kind of the experiences that I've been in. It's really fun to work for coaches that do it the right way, that take care of their kids, that take care of their staff, and truly understand that when you do that, winning is going to take care of itself, and not prioritize winning and then taking care of your kids and then taking care of your staff, but understand that that coach to coach relationship, that player to coach, coach to player relationship is what ultimately is going to lead to winning. And so once you see that and been a part of programs like that, there's really no other way to do it, I think.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that, even myself here as a host of podcasts, I don't spend a ton of time talking about the coach to coach relationship. Oftentimes I get maybe two guys that have coached with each other, and we kind of bridge the gap. Hey, we were best friends when we were on the staff together. We always went fishing, something like that. But we never really talk about that day-to-day sitting there next to this guy year round, next to these other nine guys year round. And, and we all play college football or play high school level football to some, varying degree of success. And we all have some type of ego. And I'm sure we've all sat on staff at one point in time where those egos can get in the way and cause issues. And so I think it's very important that you kind of highlighted that, as we've all experienced, maybe some of those uncomfortable meetings when staff members aren't getting along.
There's so much life that happens in a football office or in your field house that no one ever really knows about and don't need to know about.
Absolutely.
There's so many conversations, so much life experience that happens outside the lines of the X's and O's, and having those coaches around you that you can learn from, having those coaches that can walk in, having those seasoned mentored coaches on your staff that can walk into your office, close the door, not really care how you're about to receive the information
Right.
that they're going to give you, but they know based off their experience, hey, he needs to hear this, so I'm going to tell him straightforward, and I'm going to let his feelings take care of themselves.
Yeah.
That stuff is so important.
Yeah. I was on a podcast with somebody here over the last couple of weeks, and we were fawning over the dynamics of a football team, especially at the collegiate level, because most of the time those guys aren't from the same area. Those guys from all over the country and stuff like that, and
Sure.
different creeds, different walks of life. And we kind of just skipped over, like, the coaching staffs are like that as well, and it's very important that you do have the old guy with a ton of experience that can come in and drop that knowledge. The young guy that's going to be energetic but has a lot to learn. It's
Sure.
it's that dynamic that's awesome to put together, man. Now, you recently tweeted that the coaches must match their high expectations that they set for their athletes in the summer.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely interesting because we spend so much time talking about the expectations of the athletes, but almost never talk about the expectations we must have for ourselves, professional development, being there early, setting a great example for student athletes to show up in the summer. What are some of the ways you and your staff are matching and exceeding these high expectations that you're setting for your players in your program?
Yeah, I think ultimately it starts with the energy that we bring every single day to summer workouts. Here in the state of Texas, we get to work out our kids in the summer. The UIL allows us to do that under certain kind of guidelines and regulations. But that being said, it's up to the coaches to set the standard for what they want their players to do. And I think so often in our coaching profession, it's so easy to be like, well, the kids didn't work hard. Well, that's because you allowed them not to work hard. Or the kids didn't do this. Well, that's because maybe you allowed that. There's a saying in the coaching world that we've all heard, and some of us hate hearing it. But I think sometimes when we hate hearing it, it's not necessarily the saying; it's the conviction within the saying that you either coach it or you allow it.
Right.
Kids are going to respond. They're going to respond, and they're going to meet expectations. Kids love discipline, whether they realize it or not. But they love the benefit of discipline when they start to see that benefit. And in the summertime, I think, that's kind of the time where our standard and our structure that we have with our kids is as loose as it is throughout the entire year, because we don't have them during the school day to then have them before school, after school, whatever. And that structure is kind of, hey, we get you guys for an hour and a half, 2 hours, et cetera. And then you guys are, you go to your job, you go to this, you go to that. And so that structure isn't necessarily as firm as it can be as it is in the school year. And so there's a lot more decisions that kids need to make, or that kids have the ability to make in the summer. And it's easy for coaches to write off, well, that was the wrong decision not to do this, or that was the wrong decision not to do that. But in reality, we need to show them what that looks like. And so, one of the ways we've done that with our staff is showing up to workouts. Coaching is nothing but a sacrificial career profession, right?
Right.
There's some schools that do have the luxury of paying coaches over the summer to do some of this extra workout stuff, and then there's some schools that don't. But the fact of the matter is, if you want your kids to be good, you need to be around your kids, because you are one of the most consistent figures in their life. And if you want them to work hard, you need to show them what that looks like to work hard, even when you're on summer break. And so, just showing up and being around kids, I think setting the energy within that, those workouts, and then showing them leadership within that, and then I think the most important thing that we can do as coaches and as staffs is show the kids where we are constantly growing. We can do professional development. We can chalk it up and talk X's and O's for hours. We can call, some of these guys and get philosophy and things like that. But a lot of times kids don't recognize because they don't know. Right. And so I think it's important to not boast that, but I do think it's important to really relay to them, hey, guys, when I was talking to this coach the other day and kind of, sharpening my skills on this, that, and the other, this is something that he told me that, that I really think is applicable here. What do you guys think about that? And just kind of dropping that kind of knowledge to them and starting that dialogue, it not only allows them to know, like, we're constantly putting them on the forefront because we're trying to help them in our program, but at the same time, we've just let them know that we too ourselves are spending time to learn, to grow in our profession, just like we're expecting them to do, physically, mentally, and whatnot in their sport.
Yeah, I think that's a tremendous point to relay that message to the student athletes, because I don't know. I don't think student athletes have changed that much since I've coached, but the locus of control, you mentioned it earlier. When we don't have a good season as the coach, you're like, oh, they didn't work hard this summer. And
Right.
on the flip side of that, those kids are like, oh man, we our coaches, we need better coaches. And it's always this struggle of passing blame, and it's the staffs and the student athletes that recognize, hey, I know my coach was in 35 under 35. Like he's one of the best and brightest in the country. This dude, drove over to Dallas and sat down at, X high school and found out a better way to run inside zone. I feel confident about that. And likewise with your student athletes, man, my kids showed up every single day and, had the same energy that we have. And I think that just passing that energy back and forth is so different a program, successful or not. I mean, I just think that just really, really grows that mutual respect between the players and coaches.
And showing them the big picture, and it's how do you look at a kid in September when it really begins to matter, and you're getting on them because, well, you didn't show up to these summer workouts, and they can look at you and say, well, neither did you.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. I mean, that's undefendable as a coach.
Right.
If you want growth, you need to be around your kids.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important to do that. And it's also important to know, and some of these strength conditioning coordinators are so great at it, truly understand, like, everybody needs a break. Mm-hmm. Get away. This week our kids are gone. They're not coming in. I don't want them coming up here to throw. I want them to go be kids, go do whatever they need to do. Yep. And I expect our coaches to do the same. But you've got to build that stuff in so that you have that outlet.
Right.
But that way, when you need to be present, you're fresh and you can be present on both sides of the aisle, both the player and the coach.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, you had the opportunity to spend some time at two historically good programs in the state of Texas, at Lake Travis and where you are now here in Marshall. What have been a few of the challenges of coaching, especially in a the mecca of high school football, the state of Texas, and like I said, some of these powerhouse programs where parents are involved, the community is involved. You drive through these towns on Friday nights and the lights are off, everything's shut down. They're all packing that stadium, and your play calls are under scrutiny. Your decision-making is under scrutiny. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that come with coaching in these places with that very rich history?
That's a great question. I can remember my first year at Lake Travis. It was 2013. And I just left Bernie High School. I was there for a year. I actually coached with your brother Chris there. Yep. He was the defense coordinator at the time. And so, I just left Bernie and kind of got into this prestigious, nationwide kind of known program. I was 23 years old, coaching wide receivers, and thought I knew everything, right? And we go play in the state semifinal game against Cedar Hill. And that was the year that they had McMillan at quarterback. They had a defensive end that went to Northwestern. I mean, they had dudes everywhere. We ended up getting beat that game in the semifinals. They go on and beat Katy High School in the next week in the state championship game. And but anyway, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, we just played 5 rounds deep in the highest qualification of football in the state of Texas. Like, this is awesome, or highest classification. And I remember there was a set of parents that I had for one of our senior players, and they came up to me after that loss in the semifinals and said, well, it's not what we were expecting this year, but, it's still a pretty good year. And I remember sitting there thinking, we just played in the state semifinals in the highest classification in the state of Texas, might as well be the nation.
Right.
And we lose by 9 points, and this isn't what you expected. And, but it was that moment that I realized, like, wow, this place is for real.
Yeah.
There's incredible coaches in this state that go their entire career that don't make it to the third round of playoffs.
I know that.
when you're at a place like that, the first thing that it does is it creates such a high level of accountability for the coach, and it creates ultimately this competitive aspect of, I'm not only competing against the other team or the other coaches on the other sideline, I'm competing against the mentality that we must not fail. Right. Because that's the culture that these communities put on you. In Marshall, Texas, every year we're expected to go compete for a state championship. We haven't won one since 1990. We played, Rodney Southern did a great job when he was here in 2004 and 2005, and they played for 2 back-to-back. They got runner-up both years. But the expectation is that every year we are in the mix. But as a coach, I love that. Yeah. There's years that we have those athletes and those capabilities to do that, and then there's years that we don't. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't change the standard. Right. And even though there's times where those standards can be unattainable, it creates an amount of accountability on our coaches to be the best we can be, which then in essence, if we're the best we can be, we should be getting the best out of our kids. And so we may not make it to round 6 state championship, but we may make it to round 3 that year, which is the best that team could have done just based off the talent level and the age and youth and whatnot. And so being in those situations, I think it's been super beneficial, and I would encourage coaches to be in those situations. There's a lot of jobs out there where taking care of kids will keep your job, and those are great if that's what you want. But at the end of the day, the competitive nature as our coaches, we should want to be in places that hold you to a high standard, because that's only going to make us better, right? Iron sharpens iron, Right. And so when they hold you to that fire, you're going to be forged something great out of that,
Yeah. It kind of brings you back to my first job out of college. I was an assistant under Waco High School program. I actually coached at a feeder middle school, but it was Waco High School at the time. And you think about them now, they're not very good, and they haven't been good for the last about decade or so. But at this point in time, we were number 1 in the state of Texas, went to the state championship, lost in the state championship. The next year, we were ranked number 1 all season long, end up playing a first-round game against a team who we had already just demolished in non-district, and walked into the game, slipped up, and we lost it. And that was my first couple of experiences, like just being on a top-tier program in the state of Texas. And then I got a receiver's job at Texas A&M Commerce, and we were playing a lower level school that we should have just showed up on the field and handled, right, and we didn't. Man, it came down to the last play. We found a way to win the game. And it was so refreshing. My offensive coordinator came up to me and he said, "Hey, man, congrats," and gave me a high five. And I was like, "Well, we should. Hey, that game was too close. Like, what do you?" He's like, "Hey, listen, every single win that you come across, you got to enjoy it. They're so hard to come across in football. As a coach, you got to enjoy these wins, man." And I don't know, that was just a unique experience, a unique line from that coach that has always stuck with me, regardless of who we played, how much we were a favorite, the upsets, man. I just always learned to enjoy those wins because, as you mentioned, there's some high quality coaches that are, man, never make it past the first round of their career. So, I love the fact that you're in those communities where those expectations are high, but at the same time, you do want your players to never overlook. Hey, I don't care. This is the worst team in the district. You guys showed up. You did what you're supposed to do. We won. Now let's find the ways we can get better. But at the same time, man, let's enjoy these wins. So that was just something that always kind of stuck out to me there. Now, I do want to ask you here. You're nearing fall number 3 as head coach of Marshall. And I know this last year's kind of been crazy and probably made you a much better coach because of it. But what are a few things that you've learned over the last couple of years, and what advice would you give to a first-year head coach and also that guy that's the offensive coordinator at a program, the guy that's the assistant head coach like you were very early in your career? What advice would you give to those guys that are looking to try to make that next step to the head coaching position?
Surround yourself with great coaches. I'm in this seat because of the network that I kept. I'm in this seat because of some great mentors that allowed me, to get my foot into certain doors. And like a lot of them will tell me, we helped you get your foot in the door, but you got the job, you earned the job type thing. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, I understand that, and so many coaches listening, like this business is truly, a lot of it is about who you know. And it's important that you network around great people that are in line with the visions that you have in coaching. And also you network with people that are completely opposite of you. Because there's so many times in my young coaching career that I've come across a situation, I've handled it the way that I thought would be best, and it didn't work. And when it doesn't work and all you have are like-minded people around you, there's nothing more you can bring to the table. And so having some people outside of that realm that can come in and say, okay, let's try this approach, or, what do you think about this approach? I think it makes you more marketable to your kids, and to your programs. And so I think just surrounding yourself, with really good leaders and really good people. I think you need to be true to yourself. There's a lot of pressure as a head coach, right? And those wins and losses are on your name. They're not on your assistants' names. They're on your name. And with that, I think there's times where coaches get lost in the wins and loss columns. Don't get me wrong. I want to win every one of them, and I hate losing. I mean, I hate it. But you have to be true to who you are. You got to be true to your morality as a coach. And there's been times where I've gotten lost in, well, I'm going to play this player even though maybe they're not in line with what the program needs because I'm chasing this win. And the moment you do that is the moment you lose yourself as a coach. And fortunately, I've had good coaches come into the office, close the door, and say, "What are you doing? Are you chasing a win, or are you trying to build a program?" I think building a team and building a program are two very different things. There's a lot of coaches that can go out there and build teams that can get them to the next year. But when you build a program, you set that standard of discipline, you set that standard of excellence of what that is. And that may mean that you lose some people because the standard is the standard. And that's what I would say to young coaches. Never chase wins that are going to make you sacrifice who you want to be as a coach. Because once you do that one time, you'll lose the trust of the kids that are completely bought in. They'll look at you and say, "You've been doing this, this, and this, and now all of a sudden you went this direction. How can we trust you when we've been buying into everything you've been giving us? Yet you're chasing a win rather than chasing the work that we've been putting in." And I think that's so important.
Normally I have a follow-up, but I don't think there's much to follow up with that. I mean, that's 100%. That's just real talk. I mean, I've actually had a conversation with a close buddy of mine who is at a smaller school in the state of Texas. And unfortunately, when you only have one or two of those quote unquote guys in those type of programs, you really get faced with, do I do it? This is my guy. If he's not playing, I mean, this becomes tough, but he's not doing what's in line with the program. And, we had a real heart-to-heart about that, man. And he was struggling with the decision. So I'm definitely going to make sure he listens to that as a young head coach. Now, before we close up here, you've put yourself in a class of, very elite coaches across the country, all right? Not by, not saying if you're not on this list, you're not an elite coach, but you're a member of the AFCA class of 2021, 35 under 35. And obviously we didn't get the opportunity to meet this year, but we're going to meet at this next convention here in San Antonio. Why, as a high school coach in East Texas, did you find it important to go and apply for this opportunity, and what has the honor been accepted into this class meant to you?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's an unbelievable honor to kind of be accepted into this program. But to answer your first question, I think it's because this is just another avenue of growth. I think as young coaches, and because I've done it, I'm not speaking on anything of whims. I'm speaking on conviction, right? As young coaches, it's so easy to fall into the trap of I may be the next big thing. Look, I'm this age and I've gotten this opportunity. And that this game will humble you really, really quick.
That's right.
Because so will those coaches on the other sideline because they don't care. They're going to put points on the board and I think it's just another avenue of growth. It was a way to surround myself with other young men that in this profession that are striving to be great. And I've been very fortunate to have friends like, Justin Stepp and Scotty Walden and guys like that who have been in the program before. And those guys are like, man, you really need to do this. The networking that it brings, the learning environment that it brings, the constant, ultimately what it comes down to, the accountability that it brings to people in your class, and it just creates this energy for you moving forward. And so when I really started looking into it, I decided, this is something that I want to do. I still have a ton of growth. There's so many things. I mean, there's coaches out there that have forgotten more football than I've even learned, right? And so, it's important to constantly be growing, because the moment you're not growing is the moment you're getting beat. Is the moment that you're staying stagnant, and if you're staying stagnant, someone's catching you.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the way that I look at it. And so, being a part of the AFCA 35 under 35. That's going to give me an opportunity to go meet with these other young coaches, go meet with some of these older coaches that can become mentors to me, that can pour into me so that I can pour into others. And I think that's really important, because at the end of the day, as head coaches, and this is something that I've realized, even in the 2.5 years that I've done this, if you do it the right way, you're constantly serving, right? That's what this profession is all about, is service. Right. And so we're constantly taking our cup and pouring into others. But if you don't have the people to pour into you, then you have nothing to pour into others. And so AFCA 35 under 35 is a way for me to surround myself with a bunch of other people that can help pour into my cup. I can help pour into them. There's mentors within the program that can pour into me, so that I'm filled, so that I can go help fill others. And I think ultimately that was the really encouraging side of it, is just this brotherhood within coaching. It's just another small clique within the brotherhood of coaching that can create accountability and create some energy, and create the wisdom to give to those underneath you that you work with, your players, etc. And so really excited about the opportunity, really excited about the 2022 convention, to get with those guys and just kind of learn as much as I can.
Coach, we can't wait to have you there, man. Extremely proud to be associated with you, especially from that standpoint of that elite class and that elite program that we're putting together. So thanks again. Before I let you go, if you don't mind dropping your Twitter account so coaches can keep up with your story, follow what's going on in Old Marshall, Texas, and reach out to you and ask questions if they got them. Yeah,
so it's at Griedl, JGRIEDL. Follow me. I'll follow you back. Love to hear some ideas from you guys. Constantly looking for avenues to grow, because God knows I need it. So, Mario, I appreciate you having me on here, man. I really do.
No doubt, Coach. Well, we appreciate you. We'll make sure to link that Twitter account in your show notes so coaches can easily find you. Thanks again, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Inside the Headset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter at Coach Mario Price. And remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.